Number one overall pick quarterbacks have done really well and really poorly. So we're going to look back at some recent top picks to find the lessons we can apply for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow the podcast at Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms, including the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, where you can keep up with all of our video podcasts as well. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On the show today, we look at some recent number one overall pick quarterbacks going back the last decade or so to get a sense of what we should expect and what could be in store for Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, where there are some mistakes those other teams made along the way that the Bears can try and avoid, and some of the things that we saw from those quarterbacks early on that we should be ready for and not overreact to along the way. And in particular, given that Caleb Williams is coming into a very different situation than a lot of other number one overall pick quarterbacks, I think there are some striking similarities to how Andrew Luck started with the Indianapolis Colts. And I want to go a little bit deeper on that comparison. Not to say that Caleb Williams and Andrew Luck are going to be the same quarterback or the same prospect in the NFL, but the situations and the success they had, well, Andrew did early on in his career, has some through lines to what we have in Chicago right now. But as you look back over, recent top quarterbacks in the last few drafts, obviously, like this past year, Bryce Young, it's only one season. I'm not ready to have any sort of sweeping takeaways or long-term things we can learn about how this first year affected Bryce Young. But right away, you could tell what's not helpful for Bryce Young was firing your head coach. Well, first firing your offensive coordinator a few games into the season, and then firing your head coach a few games in the season. And perhaps the lesson is not that firing your head coach is bad, but more so having a head coach who is bad and deserves to be fired is bad for a rookie quarterback. It seems obvious, but it's striking how often that has happened for specifically number one overall pick quarterbacks. You look at the different quarterback picks over the last decade or so. Bryce Young this past season, his head coach fired halfway through the season. 2 years before that, Trevor Lawrence comes in with Urban Meyer as his head coach. That goes predictably. He's fired during that season. They bring in Doug Peterson for year two. Before that, Joe Burrow and Kyler Murray both got through their rookie seasons fine with their coaching staffs remaining intact for a little while. But Baker Mayfield before that in Cleveland, they fire Hugh Jackson and make a coaching change there during Baker's rookie season. Even Jared Goff back in 2016 goes through a coaching change. It's crazy how many of these number one overall pick quarterbacks have had to kind of adjust along the way, because they had Jeff Fisher for Jared Goff's rookie season. They end up, firing him and moving on to Sean McVay from there, and the rest is kind of history. But again, a number one overall pick quarterback coming in and not having a great time with all of that. Even Jameis Winston in 2015, they didn't fire Lovie Smith during his rookie season, but they did fire Lovie Smith after his rookie season. So of all these recent number one overall pick quarterbacks, it's pretty much just been Burrow and Murray that had any kind of consistent, coaching stability throughout their rookie season and their first couple of seasons to really help them get that proper foundation. Of course, you can think back to Bears, not number one overall pick quarterbacks, but first round pick quarterbacks with Justin Fields in the last year of Matt Nagy and Mitch Trubisky in the last year of John Fox, and how often we see this as a cycle where team is bad, so they get a high draft pick, or in a lot of these cases, the number one overall pick, gets that quarterback of the future, then starts year one, and team is still bad despite you drafting that quarterback, and perhaps team is still bad in large part because coach is still bad, And then they fire that coach, and then the quarterback gets a new coach in year 2, and it becomes messy from there. And a lot of those quarterbacks, don't get that clean, stable start that you want them to. And that's where we come back to Caleb Williams and Matt Eberflus and Shane Waldron. Because let's not forget, during this regular season, we were all, or most of us, myself included, were ready to fire Matt Eberflus after such a bad start, after seeming to botch it so much with Justin Fields and with this defense. The team was playing so poorly at the beginning of that season that I thought, and many of us thought, you got to change head coaches. This is not the right time. We head into the off season, the beginning of this year's off season, 5 months ago. We were ready to fire Matt Eberflus, clean out the coaching staff, get a new coaching staff in place for Caleb Williams. Now, all of a sudden, 5 months later, Matt Eberflus has a beard. We've got Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze and all this stuff, and we feel a lot better about the general direction of the team, but we're not that far away from not feeling great about the direction of the head coach. And so that's where it's like, you head into this season, you sure hope that Matt Eberflus is the guy and the right guy for this team, and that Shane Waldron is the right offensive coordinator, and that this coaching staff is headed in the right direction. But we also can't forget that we didn't feel like they were headed in the right direction 6 months ago. And all that has really changed is the players on the roster and the offensive coordinator, new offensive coordinator for sure, and then I guess new defensive coordinator as well. But right, nothing has changed about Matt Eberflus other than the coordinators underneath him and the players on his roster. And we'll see if that's enough to make the difference. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but certainly if he's able to be that guy, and Waldron's able to be that guy, and they can give him that stability, that goes a long way. Because certainly on the list of number 1 overall pick quarterbacks, it seems like the ones that have had the most successful careers, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Andrew Luck really are kind of the 3 big ones there, were the ones that had that stability in their coaching staff. And it's sort of a chicken egg thing here where it's like, that stability in the coaching staff, like they just had better coaches than the rest of them did, and that's why they're better players. But like being able to have that makes a huge difference. I'm not saying, the Bears should intentionally not fire their coaching staff, even if the coaching staff is bad, in order to protect that stability. No. If you realize at some point that Eberflus and whatever this part of that regime is not right for Caleb Williams, it's more important that you get the right coach in there and make sure that you have the right coach, as opposed to keeping the wrong guy just because you want to have stability. But it's more important to make sure that you've got the right guy, like that Caleb Williams is going to be most successful and not fall into some of these same traps that other previous number 1 overall pick quarterbacks have fallen into, if you've got the right coaches that can maintain that stability from season to season. And certainly I think Caleb Williams playing well and having a talented roster will help the coaching staff also look better. It's a two-way street there, right? You can have great coaches and bad players, and that only gets you so far. And you can have great players and bad coaches, and that can only get you so far. But if you have really good in at least one of those 2 departments, you can kind of overcome some of the deficiencies in the other, right? Great coaches can make lesser players better, and great players can make lesser coaches better. So wherever the Bears fall on that spectrum, like if you're really confident in these players, then they should be able to get by, even if you're less confident in these coaches. But if you're really confident in both, then obviously you're going to have the best possible outcome for Caleb Williams. That's why we talk so much on this podcast about that coaching search and the importance of nailing the offensive coordinator hire in Shane Waldron and the rest of this offensive coaching staff, so that Caleb Williams can come into the most stable, most successful, most developmentally lucrative coaching staff for him to not only start his career on the right path, but like continue off some of that stability. Like there's always going to be, coaching changes in the NFL happen, right? If the Bears are really good, you might lose coaches because other teams want to hire them away. And if the Bears are really bad, then you might lose coaches because you want to fire them. Like you can't expect that Caleb Williams is going to have the same staff for all 5 years of his rookie contract. Like one way or another, things will most likely going to change in some way, shape, or form. But to have that first year or 2 of stability really goes a long way for number 1 overall pick quarterbacks. That being said, even the quarterbacks that had that stability, year 1 doesn't always go amazingly, doesn't always go smoothly. And it's important to realize, like, it's funny when you really look closely at the number 1 overall pick quarterbacks, how much their stat line in year 1 does not reflect what they get from the rest of their season. So we're going to take a closer look at why we shouldn't extrapolate too much out of some of the mistakes Caleb Williams might make during his first season, next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's #1 sportsbook. It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL playoffs, and FanDuel is giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own because right now, new customers will get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Bet on anything in these playoff series. You could bet on Caleb Williams over-under for his rookie season passing yards, Roman Dunze over under rookie season receiving yards, odds for offensive rookie of the year. I mean, any $5 bet that wins, FanDuel is going to add $150 in bonus bets right into your account to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. So to claim your $150 in free bonus money from FanDuel, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Whether you get stability or not for a #1 overall pick quarterback, one of the more consistent trends across the board from a lot of the guys that we've talked about so far is especially the more negative aspects of their year one performance don't tend to bear out over the rest of their careers. That we've seen a lot of these quarterbacks, with some exceptions, but more consistently, your interceptions are going to be a lot higher in your first season, or at least higher in your first season than the rest of your career. You're going to have a lower completion percentage in your first season than the rest of their career. And even like, not even from like a production standpoint, but like the quarterback time to throw, the time from snap to throwing tends to be a bit different in their first season than it is over the rest of their career as they adjust either up or down to the NFL game. And there's some interesting movement in there that I also want to get into. But specifically, some of this stuff seems intuitive, but it's important to like remember and keep in mind so we're not overreacting to it at all during Caleb Williams' first season. That like, yeah, you would expect that when a quarterback is taken #1 overall, or any rookie quarterback is going to come in and make more mistakes during their rookie season than they will for the rest of their career. But it's important to remember like how often, that's not just like a trope or a stereotype. I mean, it's about production, so it's not that serious. But it's not like it's just a saying or a concept. Like it's pretty legit. Like when you look at some of the #1 overall pick quarterbacks, their rookie season, completion percentage is career lows, and interceptions are career highs. They're certainly thrown at a rate nearing career highs. So like Trevor Lawrence a couple seasons ago, 59.6% completion percentage, 17 interceptions. That's a career high in interceptions for him in his career. It's only been 3 seasons, so, there's still time. But, like, that's the lowest his completion percentage has ever been. The highest his interceptions have been throughout his young career. Kyler Murray, slightly better, significantly better in terms of the stats, but just a year earlier, 64% completion, 12 interceptions. Doesn't sound too bad. Those are both the worst of Kyler Murray's career. That's the lowest completion percentage at 64%, and the highest his interceptions have been at 12. Like, these young quarterbacks come in, and they're adjusting to NFL speed, to a brand new teammate, to brand new playbook, to brand new stadium, to brand new everything across the board. And they're going to be a little less accurate with those passes, and they're going to make more mistakes and throw more of those interceptions. Like the main exception to this whole conversation has been Baker Mayfield. His first season with the Cleveland Browns was a particularly strong breakout season for him. 63.8% completion percentage, 14 interceptions. He had steps back from there as his career went. Like Baker Mayfield has had kind of a weird arc that doesn't fit the trend of a lot of these other top quarterbacks taken #1 overall. And of course, we're not talking about Bryce Young because we haven't seen the rest of his career here. Jameis Winston has also kind of had some fluctuations in there. 58.3% completion percentage, I think, was his lowest as a starter. As a backup, he's had lower completion percentage seasons. He's obviously had more interceptions in seasons than he did his first year at 15, but we'll even talk about the golden child, Andrew Luck. Rookie season sets the NFL record for passing yards for a rookie, 4,300 and some odd yards. Like the most passing yards any rookie quarterback has ever had in a season. And yet, career low completion percentage of 54.1. Less than 55% completion percentage from Andrew Luck during his record-setting rookie season. He was not completing, is barely over half of his passes. He had less than Trevor Lawrence, less than Jameis Winston as rookies. Andrew Luck threw more interceptions than Jameis Winston as a rookie. 18 interceptions in Andrew Luck's rookie season. Career high for him. So the worst completion percentage and the highest interceptions of his career, but he made the Pro Bowl and set the NFL record for passing yards as a rookie in a season. So I just think it's important. Like, yes, these are things that you would expect. You would expect the completion percentage to be low and the interceptions to be higher. I don't know that we expect it to be, is it going to be the highest and the worst in both categories of a player's career? Like, we've never seen Kyler Murray or Trevor Lawrence or Andrew Luck ever dip anywhere near those numbers. Like, even when they have a bad year, right, they don't end up getting as bad as it was in their rookie season. So, like, it just goes to show you, like, this season with Caleb, he might throw more interceptions than you'd like. He might force 12, 15, 17 interceptions in there. I mean, he wasn't that risky with the ball in college. He didn't put the ball in harm's way. He tried to play hero ball a lot and forced some passes downfield, but it wasn't that he was like particularly turnover prone in that regard. But in the NFL, as a rookie, you might try a little much. And maybe that doesn't happen with him because of the type of receivers that they have in Chicago, and we'll get to that in a minute here as well. But like, that's a real possibility. And same thing with completion percentage. Like, as great as DJ Moore and Rome Odunze and Keenan Allen and Cole Kmet and all these guys are, like, they're going to be open, but like, Caleb's going to miss them sometimes. And that's okay, right? That's the key message here. It's like, year one, relax, like, let it happen, let it come, let him make the mistakes, let the inaccuracies be there, let the turnovers be there. Don't worry, like, oh man, the first time he throws a pick, things are just going to be terrible and that he's no good and the Bears got the wrong guy and they should have kept Justin Fields. Like, no, it's okay. There's going to be those mistakes. I'm also curious to see how his timing as a quarterback changes, because I mentioned it at the top of the segment. Like, when you look at quarterback time to throw, from snap to throw, it generally speaking tends to change drastically for these young quarterbacks, but it's not always in the same direction. So you either see a rookie season with a really fast time to throw that then slows down over that, like, by year two, it slows down. And then years like 2 through 4 and 5 are pretty consistent, where it's like they start out, they got to get rid of the ball quickly because I'm in the NFL and pass rushers coming and everything is so fast and my team wants me to just get rid of the ball quickly. Got to go, snap, throw, snap, throw, snap, throw, snap, throw. And you see these really fast time to throws. But then year two, they go, okay, wait a minute. I can slow it down just a beat. I can take that extra hitch on my drop back and throw. You know what I mean? And you'll see, like, whatever the low number in year one, and then it goes up in year two and then stays the same for the rest of their career for the most part. Like, there's always little fluctuations, but there's, like, you'll see them go fast and slow down. Or you see quarterbacks who start out thinking they can hold the ball for a while, got to slow down a little bit and taking it slow and probably taking too many sacks. And then year two and beyond, they speed it up. And it's like, okay, I can't keep holding on to the ball like that. I got to get rid of it faster. Got to keep the ball moving. Got to keep the offense going. You pretty consistently across the board see a very different year one time to throw compared to years 2 through 5 with almost all of these top rookie quarterbacks. The main exception I saw going through the numbers was actually Tua Tagovailoa, not a number one overall pick, but just a guy who his time to throw has been pretty consistent throughout his career. But you look, Trevor Lawrence and Joe Burrow and Andrew Luck and all these guys, even Justin Fields' time to throw changed drastically from year one into year 2 and year 3. The first year is not representative of what these young quarterbacks are going to do for the rest of their careers. Like, many of these guys have struggled. I mean, Peyton Manning is kind of the one people talk about a lot with all the interceptions he threw in his rookie season. But like, even beyond that, I mean, we talk about Andrew Luck, like 18 interceptions and a 54% completion percentage is not on paper a strong rookie season. That was record setting for him for yards, and they won 11 games and he made the Pro Bowl and all that stuff. But like, it just goes to show you, like, let's try not to get too caught up in what they do in year one, because it's not very indicative of what they're going to do in year 2, especially because, like, Baker had a really strong year 1, and then things kind of dropped off from there. And Jameis Winston, ended up throwing more interceptions as his career went on. Like, there are examples where it doesn't always mean it's going to get astronomically better, but like, it's not always a sign that it's going to get worse either. Like, it being good in your first year doesn't mean it's always going to be good, and being bad in your first year doesn't mean it's always going to be bad. It depends. It changes, and just know that, like, let's not overreact to what we see from Caleb statistically in year 1. I do think the situation he's coming to in Chicago, with all the talent around him on the field, will make for a much easier transition and a better rookie season than a lot of those other number 1 overall pick quarterbacks. And it's why I think the closest comparison in terms of situation is Andrew Luck. And there are actually some striking similarities there that I want to go through kind of across the board on everything around the quarterback, not exactly the prospects as they were coming out of the draft. So we'll look at the 2012 Colts compared to the 2024 Chicago Bears next on Locked On Bears. This episode of Locked On Bears is brought to you by our friends at Monopoly Go, the hit twist on a classic Monopoly game, all on your phone that you can take it and play Monopoly all day, every day, wherever you are, whenever you want. It's great because while you are, one person playing it on your phone, you can also still team up with your friends for timed tournaments, and you work together to build up each other's boards. And then the more that you win together, the more prizes you unlock along the way. But you can also take it the other way and be competitive and be ruthless and compete against your friends. You can smash their buildings. You can heist their bank vaults and take their money for your own. You can compete against each other to build up on leaderboards. There's always something new and exciting every day with Monopoly Go because of constantly changing tournaments and challenges. They've got unique mini games, timed events, and you can win massive multipliers for everything you win. You can rent frenzies. There's so many different twists to Monopoly that make this so fun. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go. So get off the bench and go download it now free on Google Play or the App Store. I want to be really careful to say that I'm not here to compare Caleb Williams and Andrew Luck directly as though Andrew Luck is, of course, the poster child, the golden boy of number one overall pick quarterbacks. Everyone is hoping that their quarterback becomes Andrew Luck. And I'm not here to say that Caleb Williams will be Andrew Luck or is as good as Andrew Luck or better than Andrew Luck or any of those things. But I do think when you look at the number one overall picks at quarterback, right? They always go to the worst team. Well, they're supposed to always go to the worst team in the NFL. And the Bears happen to get the pick from the worst team in the NFL and are not the worst team in the NFL, but they're pretty much one of the only teams in the last decade to actually have done that. I guess the Rams with Jared Goff, I think, traded up a massive haul to get up there. But for the most part, these are not the worst teams in football. And so they come into really crappy situations. But I think the closest comparison for Caleb is actually Andrew Luck in 2012, what he came into in Indianapolis, in large part because that was a team that was a perennial contender with Peyton Manning. Then Peyton Manning misses an entire season. They obviously drop then to the worst team in the NFL and get the number one overall pick and draft Andrew Luck. But he's coming into the team that Peyton Manning had left that had been otherwise previously pretty good, right? That's ultimately a better team that he came into that wasn't typically as bad as number one overall pick teams could be. And so it's not exactly one-to-one with where the Bears are because they still had a really bad season before that and still lost a lot of talent and still weren't that, Peyton Manning was covering up a lot of warts. But I do think when you look closer at what each quarterback is coming into, especially on offense, there are some real similarities there. That Colts defense wasn't very good, and we're expecting this Bears defense to be significantly better than what the Colts had at that time. Well, top five, I'm not ready to expect that from them again this year, but they should be a bit better. And that Colts team for Andrew Luck had quite a few injuries, and they didn't have a lot of their team stats. They were 16th in total offense that season and in the 20s in defense. They were not an statistically impressive team. They still won 11 games and made the playoffs, but a lot of those were really close games. 3-point victories, 4-point victories, 7-point victories. Those were tight, tough games that I think Andrew Luck did a lot to help pull out for them. And I think they were maybe a quote-unquote lucky team along the way some of the time there. And you may remember Andrew Luck started his first career game at Soldier Field, week 1, 2012, threw 3 interceptions and a fumble. Did not get off to a great start playing against the Chicago Bears in that first rookie season. But you go a little deeper than this. Head coach, Chuck Pagano, same kind of mentality of maybe slightly more conservatively viewed defensive-minded head coach who's super steady and calm. And obviously, Chuck Pagano had the cancer stuff, and that changes a lot of the dynamics of 2012 that the Bears hopefully will not have anything close to dealing with. But still, as far as the style of head coach, similar kind of energy from Pagano and Matt Eberflus. Offensive coordinator, Bruce Arians, Shane Waldron. Not the same personalities at all, not the same offensive systems at all. But Bruce Arians, was a successful offensive coordinator with the Pittsburgh Steelers right before that. He kind of wore out his welcome in Pittsburgh, but made a lateral move from being a successful coordinator who, went to playoff runs with their team, comes to this new team with a rookie number one overall pick quarterback. Shane Waldron, Seattle, successful playoff runs with them, first with Russell Wilson and then Geno Smith, makes a lateral move, kind of a surprise lateral move that, you wondered that he would be available and would come here, but there's some similarities there in terms of up-and-coming offensive coordinator who had success at previous stops but hadn't made the jump to head coach yet. And then, of course, Bruce Arians did right after that season and got to be the interim head coach because of the cancer stuff. So again, it doesn't compare perfectly to the Bears, but I think there's some similar energy and just kind of vibes around like offensive coordinator who has some experience but is still like a younger or not younger in terms of age, but like an up-and-coming mind in terms of being at the forefront of some innovative stuff in the NFL, and comes and now gets a special rookie quarterback to work with and potentially have a lot of success with. Plus, you pair them with receiving cores. The Colts, 2012, had an aging Reggie Wayne who was still playing at a high level, but getting towards the end of his career, a little past his prime, but still playing really well. Awfully sharp comparison there to Keenan Allen. Again, not the skill set, different styles of wide receiver, but like older, veteran, winning wide receiver who's going to make a rookie quarterback's job that much easier. A lot of similarities there. They also had a young T.Y. Hilton at that time. I don't know if you want to make T.Y. Hilton know the Bears than DJ Moore or Rome Odunze. Like, I think the Bears are giving him even a third receiver that Andrew Luck didn't have. Andrew Luck, to be fair, was supposed to have Austin Collie, who was never a 1,000-yard guy, but he was a solid weapon. But Collie was hurt that season, missed the entire year, basically. So, like, he had good older receiver, good younger receiver. The Bears certainly have that in spades for Caleb Williams, and even at tight end, right? That Bruce Arians offense did a lot of 2 tight end sets with Dwayne Allen and Colby Fleener. I think Cole Kmet and Gerald Everett are better tight ends and more proven, more consistent than what Dwayne Allen and Colby Fleener were. But still, like, you think about an offense that can come out in 2 tight end sets and, you know, load up the box to kind of keep some of the pressure and dictate the coverage a little bit more off of the quarterback to make his job easier. They've got receivers they can attack you with, tight ends they can attack you with, formationally different things. You know, defensive head coach, offensive coordinator that made that kind of lateral move from being successful at a previous franchise, kind of a proven commodity at offensive coordinator. Like, all of these things don't mean that Caleb Williams is going to have the success Andrew Luck did, but I just think when you were looking for a comparison here, there's a lot of similarities there. And that Colts team went from whatever they were, 2 wins the year before, albeit largely because of the quarterback situation. But they were, I think, 11-6 when they count the playoff loss like in there. But like 11-win playoff team in 2012. Like, that's the kind of thing I think you hope on the high end that the Chicago Bears can do this season. I'm not ready to predict an 11-win season, but 11-5 that regular season, and then, you know, made it to the playoffs and lost in the first round to a pretty darn good Ravens team. But like, that would be ideal of a situation for the Caleb Williams and the Bears. Like, Andrew Luck still finished 7th, I think, the team offense was 7th in passing yards that season. They ran the ball okay, but they weren't a great rushing team. Their defense was 21st in points and 26th in yards. In theory, the Bears should be able to give Caleb Williams a better defense than that, and probably a better running game than what Andrew Luck had. Although, again, the Colts had a lot of injuries that season, so perhaps they were projected to do a little bit better. Their defense just wasn't even all that stellar. I think Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney underwhelmed a little bit as they got later in their careers. The Bears are a much younger team all around than I think some of the key players on that Colts defense. So I think the Bears being a younger version makes it more volatile, that they've got a higher ceiling and a lower floor then. Like, this Bears team could have all the young players play really well and be great and be an 11-12 win team, or there could be growing pains with Caleb and with the offensive line being young and some young players in this defense being put in big pitch situations, and maybe the pass rush isn't as strong as you'd like it to be, and maybe the Bears finish with 8 wins, 7 wins, 9 wins, and then they're not the Andrew Luck Colts just yet, but they're certainly farther along than Trevor Lawrence. I think won 3 games his rookie season. All of these other number 1 overall pick quarterbacks were below 500. Every single one of them except Andrew Luck. He's the only quarterback since the year 2000. I didn't look back beyond 2000. But in the last 25 years, every single number 1 overall pick quarterback finishes below 500 except Andrew Luck. The bigger point here being the situation the Bears have put Caleb Williams in is giving him the best chance to be the first quarterback since Andrew Luck to finish above 500 in their rookie season. Not that Caleb is going to be Andrew Luck, but that year 1 with the Bears can go more similarly to how year 1 with the Colts did for Luck, who, by the way, had a low completion percentage and high interceptions, right? It's not the perfect rookie season, but its team does well because number 1 overall pick quarterback has been in a good spot that happens to have a couple of receivers with some similar timelines, a couple of tight ends with a similar usage, head coach and offensive coordinator with similar styles of, sort of background coming into the situation. So that's just where the comparison is more interesting to me on the dynamics around these 2 young quarterbacks. I'd love to hear what you think about that comparison of situation and about how rookie quarterbacks do and what your expectations will be for Caleb Williams then as a result. Let us know in the comments here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel, or you can tweet us at Locked On Bears or post in the Locked On Bears Facebook group. However you do it, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, because that's going to be the best way to keep up with all of our daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. Coming up this week, we're going to talk about the Bears' undrafted rookie free agents. We were going to talk about their schedule, but the NFL pushed back the schedule release date a week with no explanation up to this point, but it's going to be next week, I guess. We'll talk Bears schedule, but we want to get to know some of these undrafted free agents and who has the best chance to make this Bears 53-man roster. So come on back for that. We're your daily Bears listen each and every day. We appreciate you making us your first listen. And in exchange, I always make sure to find time for you to bear down.